and a local vantage point of ISKCON, both as an organization and what we as individuals need. She's an esteemed scholar. She's done Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, and Bhakti Vedanta degrees, and all through VIHE, the Vrindavan Institute of Higher Education. And she's also a mother of two wonderful Krishna conscious devotees. And with her husband and family, has spent a lot of time in Vrindavan, Mayapur. Any service that you can think of in Srila Prabhupada's movement, Prabhu has done it. So we are very fortunate to have her association. Today she'll be talking to us about the principles of freedom. And can all of us give a one big Hari Bol for Prabhu?
Connecting. Yeah. What's that? Let's see. How do I do that? Hare Krishna. Thank you. How do I get the Bluetooth thing going? It has it can connect by Bluetooth, but how?
You go to connections, is there any option?
Or settings? It did this in Toronto, so it does work. Oh, yeah, Bluetooth right there. It's on. Discoverable. Is it this one?
No, the device is right.
It's called ISKCON Columbus.
It's not showing it.
I'm not sure. Bluetooth?
This one.
Yes. Ah, there we go.
There it is.
So it's connecting. It's there? Technical difficulties.
Technology.
Maybe just send the PowerPoint to send it to Gmail, and then one of us can just move through the slides and it can just as a person connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Presentation. Yes, it's connected. It's connecting.
Should we just wait a minute?
It's connecting, I think.
Oh, it says couldn't connect. Email it. Okay, I need to go online here.
1 second.
PowerPoint presentation. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to do, but I need to have the password to log into the internet. Lowercase. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. Let me try.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
This is the guest one. Should I do the one?
This one.
Okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. What happened? It went black. You killed my computer.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
What do you need to do?
This password, can you go to the same thing again?
Go to what?
Wi-Fi.
Oh, the Wi-Fi.
Let's come Columbus.
This is the guest.
Which one? This one. Srila Prabhupada, all capital, small letters.
Yeah, that's what we did, right?
But I think we did it for West, I think we did.
Oh, okay.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
It's called Columbus@gmail.com. Some in the presentation. TV@gmail.com.
Okay, hold on. Wait,
Go to Gmail.
sorry, this thing confuses me. Okay.
It's called Columbus TV. TV@gmail.com.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, sense. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Yeah. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jai. Okay. Jai, sorry for the delay. Welcome everyone. Today's Sunday Feast class. So I need to tell you when you'll be clicking. All right. So we're going to talk about the principles of freedom. Is anyone here for the first time? Everybody here is seasoned. Oh, you're here for the first time. Okay, great. So thank you for coming. Principles of freedom. So here we are in the USA, the land of the free and the home of the brave, as the national anthem says that we are. And definitely Americans have, relatively speaking, a great deal of freedom compared to some countries in the world. You know, we're very blessed, very fortunate in that way. And yet we still feel like we don't have freedom to do many things that we want to do, right? So even in the country, which is perhaps one of the most free countries in the world, we feel like there are so many limitations to our freedom. And so we're going to talk about, is anyone really free? Even in the land of the free, is anyone really free? And what is real freedom? So, yeah, just click there. So this is a quote from Srila Prabhupada's purport to Srimad Bhagavatam. It says, the need of the spirit soul is to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill the desire for complete freedom. The soul wants to get out of the covered walls of the greater universe to see the free light and the spirit. So the reason that we value freedom so much is because it's actually an inherent need of the soul itself. It's not just a mental thing or an emotional thing, but it's actually the soul needs freedom, because as souls, we are meant to be free. We're supposed to be free. And so we crave for it in the same way that we crave for, we crave for immortality, and we crave for unending happiness. We also crave for freedom, because these are the natural qualities of the soul, that the soul is eternal. I just need it a little closer to me because my eyes. That's good. Because the soul is by nature, in Sanskrit we say Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. And part of that is also that the soul has freedom, because we're meant to be in the spiritual world where we don't have to get sick, we don't have to die, we don't have to, basically every desire is fulfilled, because every particle of the ground in the spiritual world is a wish fulfilling gem. Every tree is we call it Kalpavriksha tree, a wish fulfilling tree. So it's a place where all wishes are fulfilled. But here in the material world, most of our wishes are unfulfilled, right? We can't always get what we want. There's even a song like that, right? Can't always get what we want. So, and this verse is interesting because it's saying that the soul wants to get out of the covered walls of the greater universe. So, what to speak of all the conditions in our lives that seem to limit our freedom? Even the universe itself is like a cage. We're encaged within a limited universe. If we read the Srimad Bhagavatam, one of our principal scriptures, we can learn about the structure of the universe, and it's described there to be like a coconut, like a coconut that has a shell that's totally closed, and inside the coconut there are layers. So you get it like a fresh coconut from the tree. It's green on the outside, it's big, and it's green on the outside, and then there's a layer of fibers, right? And brown fibers, and then you come to the inner shell, that's the hard shell, and then inside the inner shell there's like a layer of the white coconut meat, and then the water's inside. So there are all these layers, and each one of those layers is totally enclosed, so that by the time you get to the middle of the coconut shell, it's just completely covered. It's just, there's not a single chance that a particle of light is going to enter the coconut. Completely dark inside. So the universe, material universe that we're all situated in, although it's so big that we can't see, the outer shells of the universe, but it's described that there are layers. There's a layer of earth, and then there's a layer of water, and a layer of air, and a layer of fire, and a layer of ether, and each layer is 10 times thicker than the previous layer. And so it's just layers that are actually miles wide. And it's all enclosed, so it's completely enclosed. And if there was no sun inside the universe, it would be as dark as inside that coconut. But fortunately, by the grace of God, we've been blessed with the sun to illuminate the universe so that we can see what we're doing here. But still, the soul is entrapped within the universe, and then within that universe, we're kind of entrapped on a planet, right? By the force of gravity and the atmosphere, we're dependent on this planet. We can't break through and go to other planets and live there. Maybe we can get in a space shuttle and go through temporarily, but we have to come down because the conditions there are not suitable for our survival. And then we're trapped in our situations here, right? We get entangled in all kinds of life situations that sometimes we feel very stuck in, like our jobs, our social situations, and things like that. And then ultimately we're trapped in a body, right? The soul is trapped inside this temporary body. Sometimes we really wish that we could be in a different body or be somewhere else. Like, why do I have to have this body in this situation? Especially when we get sick, it's like, ugh, I'm stuck in this thing that's giving me so much trouble right now, full of pains and mucus and, you know, whatever. So in so many ways, we're trapped and oppressed by these unnatural restrictions, because it's not a natural condition for the soul to be trapped like this. The soul is meant to have freedom, right? And that's why inherently we want to be free, and we're always enticed by promises of freedom. So we're going to take a look also at another important thing that restricts our freedom, apart from just the physical restrictions of being in a body in a universe. And go ahead and click. So that is our karma. So karma means the laws of action and reaction, right? They say that what goes around comes around. So you can see here the picture that he's doing something, he's pushing the thing, and he's thinking that it doesn't matter, I just pushed a little thing down here. But he doesn't see how it's coming around and it's going to fall on his head and crush him. So we think that we can do whatever we want, but actually we become entrapped in the reactions of our own activities. And that's karma. And also karma limits us in other ways that, for example, you know, the situation that we're born in is based on our actions from previous life or previous multiple lifetimes. And so those become limiting factors. For example, we may want to be a millionaire in this life, but if we don't have the karma for it, what we call sukriti, or the good karma, then it's not going to happen no matter how hard we work. Or we may want to be a famous celebrity, but no matter how, you know, how many things we post on YouTube, or how many how talented we are, we're not going to be a celebrity unless we have the karma for it. And then on the other hand, there's so many things that we don't want, right? We don't want illnesses, we don't want legal problems, we don't want accidents, but they happen because of karma. So many things that we want, we can't get because we don't have the karma, and many things that we don't want, we do get because we have the karma. So in that way, we end up stuck in so many situations that limit our freedom, that we would choose not to do it, or we would choose to do something else, but we don't have that choice. So karma restricts our choices in life. Yeah. And yeah, go ahead and go to the next slide. So yeah, this the first picture here on the left, it shows how, yeah, what we do comes back to haunt us, like the poor man there with his dominoes. We have the picture of the man, and he's killing a cow, but the faces are reversed. So this is indicating that, okay, now you're killing the cow and you're thinking that that's okay, but in the next life, you're going to have to take birth as a cow, and that cow is going to take birth as a human, and the cow is going to kill you, and your flesh is going to be on the plate instead of the cow in the previous lifetime. So like that. So our karma follows us from one life to the next. And sometimes we feel like we're getting away with things. You know, we do something and, you know, we're still good. We think everything's okay. There was no reaction, but it'll catch up to us eventually. And then this leads to what's called samsara, or the cycle of repeated birth and death in the material world. So lifetime after lifetime, we leave one body, that's called death. We enter another body, that's called birth. And so there's this cycle of repeated birth and death. Although the soul is eternal, it looks like we're repeatedly dying and being born again, dying and being born again. And why are we having to be born again? Is because we have karma. We have, it's called karma bandhana. That's how Krishna talks about it in the Bhagavad Gita, karmic bondage. So as long as we have some karma coming to us that we haven't faced the consequences of our action yet, then we need to take birth again in order to face those consequences. And they may be bad consequences or good consequences. So even if we do good actions in this world, So if we do good things in this world, then good will be coming to us, right? We gave in charity, so that means we're going to be getting some kind of wealth, some kind of prosperity in the future. Or if we hurt someone, then someone's going to hurt us in the future. And if that future happening doesn't happen in this life, we need to take birth again so that it will happen to us. So even good activities which bring good karma are also binding. So we'll take a birth again. If we do many good things, we'll still have to take birth again, but we'll have a good birth. We'll be born in a good family with responsible parents, with plenty of opportunities for education. We'll have a beautiful, healthy, strong body, and maybe we'll be born into wealth, like that. So we'll have a relatively nice life, but we'll still have a material that we'll have to enjoy. But it's never going to be total enjoyment, because the material world is, like Krishna says, dukkha alayama shashvatam, means that it's temporary and it's full of dukkha, it's full of miseries, right? That everybody, no matter how healthy, no matter how beautiful you are, no matter how rich you are, you're still going to suffer. You're still going to get sick. You're still going to get hurt from time to time. You're still going to lose loved ones. You're still going to have problems. So everybody in this material world is facing difficulties. And so the key to freedom is getting out of this cycle of birth and death, is to actually becoming free from all of our karma. And Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that the way to get free from all of our karma, good and bad, is through devotional service. He said devotional service is just like a blazing fire which burns all karma to ashes and just eliminates all of our karma from this life, from previous lives. All stages, all forms of karma are just gone. So, but before we get into that, let's go a little bit more into the types of activities that really very deeply bind us, because these are the things that chain us to the material world. So, go ahead and click. Yeah, so we're going to talk about addictions, because there are certain behaviors that they don't just give us bad karma, but the karma entangles us, but the behaviors themselves are entangling. They bind us to themselves. The very activities bind us to those activities. So those are called addictions. And there's two different types of addictions. Go ahead and click. So there's substance addictions. So everybody's more familiar with these, addictive drugs and alcohol, nicotine, caffeine. These are all substances that cause us to become physically or chemically addicted. So that we do it once and twice and 3 times, and before you know it, you need to do it. Like, you can't stop doing it. If you stop doing it, you actually have symptoms of withdrawal that can be like you get a headache, or I had a friend one time, we were driving somewhere and he drank a lot of coffee. So it was a long road trip and I didn't drink coffee, so I was fine. But he was like, I need to go and get a coffee or a Coca-Cola or something with caffeine in it. I'm like, why? And he's like, because I'm getting a headache. And I was like, really? I didn't have experience of this. And he said, yeah, if I go without caffeine for too long, I'll get a really bad headache. And then I said, wow, that's terrible. It's just so like limiting, like you're forced. Now you're forced. You don't want to take the exit and go to the gas station and get a Coca-Cola or something, but you're like forced to. He's like, yeah, it's sad. So it's like, why would you do that to yourself? Yeah, and then the more strong the substances are, then the more strong the withdrawal symptoms are, right? Sometimes it might result in seizures or even stroke or all kinds of maladies that come from substance addictions. So then the next type of addictions are behavioral addictions. So these are behaviors that we get addicted to. In this case, it's not a chemical dependency, but in some senses it is, because of the way it affects the brain. So these are gambling, all kinds of compulsive behaviors that compel you to do them. So we hear about compulsive gamblers, that they actually don't want to gamble. They know that it's bad. They know that they're losing their money, that it's destroying their marriage, it's destroying their family, and but they just can't stop themselves from doing it. And then, so gambling and also sex is also an addictive behavior that people have found out that people become addicted to sex, they become sexual predators, they become pedophiles, and they don't want to do these things. They know that it's just socially unacceptable, that it's destroying them, it's compromising their ability to be effective humans, but they just can't not do it. And then it can lead to all kinds of unhealthy behaviors related to it. People get addicted even to pornography, just seeing sexual images and videos on a screen. They get addicted to that. And so pornography is now, it's like, of course, a lot of it's underground, so they can't estimate how much money is actually generated from that industry, but it's anywhere from 12 billion to 97 billion dollar industry. And they target, they target very aggressively target people, and especially try to get young people so to get addicted from an early age. So these things are very dangerous, and they can really ruin our lives. Don't do yet. And then the next one is meat eating. So this is something that generally is not thought of as addictive, but actually research has shown that there are chemicals in meat, like hypoxanthine is one, another is inosinic acid and guanylic acid are present in meat, and they have a chemical structure similar to caffeine in coffee, or another thing called theobromine that's in chocolate, and that are addictive. So there are these stimulants in meat that affect the central nervous system, and that's why when people try to become vegetarians, sometimes they say that they're feeling weak, or they're feeling fatigued, and they think it's because they're not getting enough protein, but it's actually because they're experiencing withdrawal from these central nervous system stimulants. They don't have the same energy they did before because they're not having chemical stimulation from those things. So it's not a question of protein, because vegetarian food has lentils and beans and all these things have so much protein. Even like lentils have more protein per serving than meat even. And we have civilizations that have been thriving for millennium, like in India, where people are very healthy, very strong, stronger than a lot of meat eaters, and live long lives on vegetarian diets. So like that. So these are all compulsive behaviors. And so we'll look at how they affect the brain. I won't go a lot into the science of this, but just suffice it to say that these addictive behaviors alter the nerve pathways in the brain in such a way that the addicted person becomes basically like hardwired to perform the behavior. So there are certain nerve pathways that if they're stimulated will just react, right? Like knee-jerk reaction. Like if somebody hits a spot on your knee, your leg moves, right? Or if you touch something hot, then you're just going to drop it. You don't think. It just bypasses the brain to some extent. Or if somebody puts, you're going to blink. So these are kind of reflex actions that bypass the brain. So there are certain behaviors that form circuits in the central nervous system that become kind of like so solidified that although the intelligence may be able to act, but it's difficult. It's kind of like the channel is so well established that it just creates a nerve impulse that forces you to act a certain way. And that's what these types of addictive behaviors and addictive substances do. They kind of cement or hardwire a certain nervous response in the brain that makes that even though you don't want to do something, you end up doing it anyway, like that. So like that, there's an opportunity, and you see the opportunity, you don't want to do it, it's morally wrong, it's not good for you, it's not good for your health, it's not good for you in any way, shape, or form, it has social repercussions, you're trying to stop, but you just can't. So if you talk to people who have addictions, the different kinds of addictions, really, they see the opportunity. They see, like, I was talking to one psychologist who does therapy for people who are pedophiles. And he was saying that the person doesn't really want to do it, but they see the child, they see that no one's around, they see, that they can get away with it. And then they just get into this state of this state where, if they don't do it, it's just impossible to not do it. They just get locked into the vision of the experience. And it has visceral effects on the body, like the heart starts pumping, they feel that, like, the face getting flushed, and they almost get into a kind of like trance-like state, like this weird trance-like state where they just lose themselves. They just lose their ability to control their mind and senses, and they just go ahead and they just forget about everything, like all the consequences and everything like that. And they forget about their own values. They forget about their goals in life. They forget about all the trouble that they're going to get into and how it's going to destroy this child's future and things like that. And they just do it. So Krishna actually talks about this in the Bhagavad Gita. And he says that when contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. From such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. And then he goes on to say, from anger, complete delusion arises. From delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So just seeing the object of the senses and contemplating on it, then it just gradually, the more you get absorbed in your desire for the object of the senses, the more you become bewildered, you forget everything, you lose your intelligence becomes useless, and then you just do that act and fall down. It means become degraded by your own behavior. So that's the downward cycle that we can easily get into if we're not careful. But fortunately, there's an escape route. And so this is the next verse in this sequence from Bhagavad Gita. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control the senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So this is the inspiration for the title for this session, is Regulative Principles of Freedom. So what are these regulative principles of freedom that enable us to not go down that downward spiral, that enable us to stop doing something wrong before we do it, that prevent us from getting into that trance in which we just turn into like a zombie that's forced to, do something that we don't want to do. So, So in yoga, there's a Ashtanga yoga system, 8 limbs, and it starts, the foundation of yoga, any type of yoga, is yama and niyama. So we'll talk about yama. Click. So yama means basically the don'ts, the things that we shouldn't do if we want to be successful in yoga, restraining ourselves from behaviors that are unfavorable to spiritual growth. And niyama means the positive things that we need to do. So those that are favorable for our spiritual growth. And if we need to do these things before we can even go to the next step. So in a traditional Ashtanga yoga, before you even get into asana, pranayama, pratyahara, you need to be following the basic do's and don'ts, because otherwise there's no foundation for the yoga practice at all. So in Bhakti Yoga, there are 4 main yamas. And these are the 4 regulative principles. So no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating, and no illicit sex. So we can see that these are the exact behaviors that we were looking at before that are the most addictive behaviors, that are the things that really lead us into this compulsive mentalities that drive us to do things that we don't want to do, that we become addicted to, so we can't stop doing them. And And also these particular behaviors create the worst karma, the most vicious karma that really comes back to crush us. So for many reasons, we want to stay away from these. That's the negative side. And then also, it's important to follow these regular principles of freedom because they support the 4 pillars of Dharma. So go ahead and click. So the first pillar of Dharma is austerity. In Sanskrit, it's called tapa. So austerity is supported by no intoxication, because a lot of people take intoxication because they want to escape from the difficulties of life, right? If they're just stressed or distressed or depressed, they'll go and drink, try to drown their sorrows, or take drugs to try to relax because life is disturbing, you know, or to just enter an altered state of consciousness so they can just forget about reality, like that. But actually, it's good to have a sober view of reality. It's very favorable for spiritual life to really have a sober look at the world and really understand the nature of this world. That, like we were talking about, that it is a place of there's a lot of suffering in the world, and start asking questions instead of just trying to escape from suffering through artificial means. Really ask the hard questions, like, you know, why is there so much suffering in the world? What's going on here? Why am I suffering? How can I get out of this condition of suffering? And that leads us to spiritual inquiries, like, is there a God? If there is, why is he allowing this suffering, you know, and like that. So when we start asking those are the real questions that we should be asking, right? Those are the important questions that lead us to grow spiritually and to learn about ourselves and about the nature of this world. So that requires a sober mind. It requires some gravity of thought. Okay, and then the next one is no gambling. So no gambling supports the pillar of truthfulness, or satyam. And so truthfulness is very important, because if we lie, if we try to deceive others, then we get ourselves into trouble. It makes life very complicated, right? Especially if you don't have a very good memory. You end up telling one story to one person, one story to another person. Before you know it, you're getting called out, and then you find yourself like having to face the truth anyway. And you may as well have just done this in the first time, because now they found out the truth after all, and now they don't trust you because you cheated and lied and all this stuff. So in addition to all the karmic reactions, it also just makes life difficult, complicated, and the truth always comes out in the end. But another aspect of truth is the absolute truth. So we want to understand not just what's real in this world, but we want to understand the ultimate reality. What is the ultimate reality? What is the ultimate truth, or the ultimate knowledge, transcendental knowledge, real knowledge? And so when we are truthful, then we put ourselves in a position to understand what is really true and real in this world. And that is the spiritual truth. Okay, then no meat eating upholds the principle of the pillar of religion, which is compassion. So of course, meat eating is the antithesis of compassion, because it's an act of violence in which we have no consideration for the suffering of the animal that's being killed just so I can have a hot dog or a hamburger or whatever, a steak or a pork chop or something like that, chicken wings. But actually, if anyone's ever been to a slaughterhouse and seen animals killed, it's horrible. It's just really horrifying. It's terrible. And to put animals through so much suffering, and even not even just the killing, but the way nowadays, the way animals are raised, in the meat industry, they're raised under such inhumane circumstances. They're put in tiny little cages and they're pumped up with hormones and steroids, and sometimes they don't see the light of day. And it's just really atrocious, abominable activities. And it's totally unnecessary, like we don't need to eat meat, right? We're just talking about it's totally unnecessary. So just to satisfy somebody's palate, so many animals need to suffer so much cruelty and untimely death and also it blocks the animal from its journey, its natural progression, because there's a oh what oh there's an ant about to jump on me. Because in the scriptures we understand how even though evolution doesn't happen the way like you know in material scientists talk about evolution, so it's not, we didn't evolve from monkeys over millions of years of evolution, but there is a certain type of evolution of species over lifetimes. So there'll be a lower animal like a fish, right, that will evolve into you know, like let's say a rabbit, and then in its next life it will, so the fish dies and then the soul from the fish goes to another form of life, a higher form of life, it's a land animal, and then the rabbit dies and the soul leaves that body and will take birth as, you know, maybe a cow, and then the cow dies a natural death and the soul goes into a human body. So the species are working themselves up from, you know, the very beginning is like plants and trees and then maybe insects, and so it's working itself up the hierarchy of species out of 8,400,000 species to finally come to the human form of life. And the human form of life is the only form of life in which we can actually understand God. We can actually ask questions about who am I and why am I here and what is my purpose and where am I meant to be and why do I have to suffer and why do I have to die. And we can make spiritual progress. We can read the scriptures and understand them and hear from saintly people and make spiritual progress. So the human form of life is so important. And if we kill an animal untimely, then it didn't finish its time in that life, in that particular type of body. So it needs to take birth again in the same species. And if we keep killing the same species, it never gets to come to the human form of life. And so it's very bad for that soul. The soul gets stuck just for our selfish sense indulgence. So out of compassion for living entities in the grander scheme of their spiritual sojourn, and also just in this life to not cause unnecessarily pain and death to their bodies, we should not eat meat. And by developing that compassion for animals, that extends to our relationships with everyone. So we can have more sensitivity with dealing with our friends, with our family, with people that we come in contact with, and we can act compassionately, charitably, generously, and helping other people, and becoming better people, and creating a better world. So then the last one, no illicit sex, that upholds the principle of purity. Shocham. Shocham means cleanliness or purity. So some people might think, well, how does illicit sex lead to uncleanliness? But if we look at the language that we talk about illicit sex with, so people who are always thinking of, when we say illicit sex, we mean sex outside of marriage. So people who are just always thinking of sex, then we say they have what kind of mind? A dirty mind. People who make jokes in relation to sex, those jokes are called dirty jokes. So even in the English language, the way we talk about, these kinds of things to do with illicit sex, it's considered dirty, right? They used to call them dirty movies, like X-rated movies are dirty movies. So there is this acknowledgement that illicit sex is something dirty, that it contaminates the mind. And it actually blocks us from being able to think of pure thoughts, because if you have all that dirty stuff in there, then it doesn't allow for clean thoughts or pure thoughts or higher thinking. So we want to be able to think of higher things. And so it's very important, especially, I always encourage young people to maintain your sexual purity. Just, save yourself until marriage, wait until marriage. And then it's just so psychologically healthy. Otherwise, having sex before marriage causes so much emotional and psychological turmoil and heartbreak and insecurity and depression and all these things. But if we just keep our sexual purity, our relationship purity, then we can be very balanced and mentally stable and confident. And then we get married, and then we're in a responsible relationship where we want to have children. And then it's actually a beautiful thing. You know, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. So it's actually a very beautiful and glorious thing, you know, for a married man and woman to produce beautiful children and raise them in a spiritual understanding and conceive them through proper sexual connection. So yes, so we want to avoid these no's, these yamas, that are some of the toughest addictions, that give us some of the worst karmic bondage. And then in addition to avoiding these things, we want to simultaneously cultivate the qualities that are favorable for spiritual growth. So those are, now we're going to go into the niyamas. So there, in Bhakti, there are 4 yamas and there are 5 niyamas. So that's the next slide, which is the 5 regular principles of freedom, or Panchanga Bhakti. So in Ashtanga Yoga, it's Ashtanga, 8 limbs, and in Bhakti, it's Panchanga. I heard this term from Vaisheshika Prabhu. And he talks about Panchanga Bhakti. And so these are given in the by Srila Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion, where he actually lists 64 items of Bhakti. Bhakti means devotional service. Bhakti Yoga means connecting. Yoga means to connect to God, connect to the divine through, in this case, Bhakti. Bhakti means devotion or love, loving connection with the Lord. And so out of those 64 items of devotional service, or 64 items of Bhakti, Rupa Goswami says there are 5 that are most potent. And if we just do this 5, or even if you just do 1 out of the 5, you can achieve all success in spiritual life. But particularly these 5 are extremely potent. So the first is chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Yeah, so Nam Kirtan. And so this is one of our most fundamental key practices in the Hare Krishna movement and the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, is chanting the names of the Lord, the Hare Krishna mantra, which we were singing earlier, and we probably will again at the end of this. So it can be sung, it can be chanted individually, like a called japa, private mantra meditation. And it's very purifying. All of these are. We can just go through these. So the next one is hearing and discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is a book. It's one of our principal scriptures, and it's said to be the book that illuminates this dark age that we are presently in. So we look around us and look at the state of the world and the state of the human condition, and there's a lot of darkness. It's a very dark time in human history in many ways. But the Srimad Bhagavatam is the light. It's just like the sun that rises in the morning and dispels the darkness of night. So in this age that we live in, there's a lot of darkness, but if we just read, hear, and discuss Srimad Bhagavatam, then that will provide a guiding light so that we can see the path forward and the path of real spiritual progress, the path of freedom, which is what we're talking about here. So the next one is serving the deity with faith. Shri Murtir Shradaya Sevana. So here we have the deity in the temple. The deity is a representation of the Lord who comes in this form, who very kindly manifests in the form of the deity. And sometimes people in the Western world, they become a little worried when they see deities in the temple, because they've heard that they shouldn't worship idols. But this is not an idol. The deity in our temples are not idols. The idols that are spoken about in the Bible are concocted images. They had idols they'd have statues of, goats and all kinds of different forms that they would worship for different purposes. But the deities that we see here are all authorized forms of the Lord, that the actual descriptions of these forms are given again and again throughout the scriptures, like in Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam, we see so many detailed descriptions of the transcendental form of Lord Vishnu, of Lord Krishna. And and also in the scriptures, there are instructions, detailed instructions about how to make these forms of the Lord, how to carve the forms, what kinds of materials you can use. There are all kinds of mantras and rituals and procedures for making a deity, for installing a deity, and invoking the presence of the Lord in the deity. So when the deities are duly installed, according to all the proper procedures, then it's understood that the Lord has agreed to receive our worship through this form. And so we can engage in services, we can offer food, we can bathe and dress the deities. And it just reminds us, it serves as a very strong reminder that the Lord is a person. He's a personality. He's not a person like us, but he's a supreme person. He's a divine person. And he has his personality, and we can also have a personal relationship with him. And part of that personal relationship is in serving the deity and feeling the loving reciprocation of the deity through our service. So that's very powerful. And then number 4, associating with the Lord's devotees, sadhu sangha. So this is very important, to get together with like-minded people who are also seeking spiritual enlightenment, who are wanting to not get pulled down by these addictive behaviors. They're trying to purify themselves of past karma and make a change, make a clean break away from a life, the cycle of repeated birth and death and all the suffering that comes with it in the material world. So devotees are usually people who are very determined, that I am going to adopt a lifestyle which is favorable for my spiritual progress. I'm going to stay away from intoxication. I'm going to stay away from all these compulsive behaviors like gambling and intoxication and illicit sex, and try to really live a pure life, live a clean life, live a good life, a life that's favorable for my own real self-interest, because ultimately I'm a soul. And so my real self-interest as a soul is spiritual self-interest, spiritual progress. Real progress is spiritual progress. Real advancement is spiritual advancement. So that's what I'm going for. Of course, I need to do other things. I need to act in this world because I have a material body. I need to provide, food, clothing, and shelter for my body. But the real thing is that I need to make spiritual progress. So spiritual life is a priority for devotees. And when we're with devotees, then we also automatically understand these things, and we also automatically engage in the processes, because devotees are going to be always trying to do something for the pleasure of the Lord, always engaged in acts of devotional service. So when we're with devotees, we'll automatically be pulled into those activities of devotional service, like chanting the holy names and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, doing services for the deities, doing programs and festivals for sharing Krishna consciousness with others. And we've experienced a lot of joy from those kinds of activities, and that's association. And then the last one is residing in a holy place connected to Lord Krishna. So this can be going on pilgrimage to a sacred place. Like in India, we have many holy places, like Vrindavan, where Krishna appeared and spent his childhood. We have Mayapur Dham, which is the place where Lord Chaitanya appeared and formed his transcendental pastime. So we can go to these places and feel the spiritual potency and recharge our spiritual batteries, as they say. But also even coming to the temple, like you've all come to the temple today, that's also fulfilling this is also a way of practicing this principle of freedom. Because when we come to the temple, it's a different kind of environment. You get a different kind of feeling. It's a different experience than what we experience out there doing all kinds of mundane activities. It's like a break, you feel uplifted and inspired and supported, because when you come to the temple, you're getting association with devotees, and you're also going to hear something and chant the names and see the deity. And so basically all 5 of these principles of freedom can be fulfilled just by coming to a holy place, being with devotees, and everything falls into place. So all these 5 processes are very potent purifiers. They purify our hearts of the qualities that drive us to do the wrong things, that drive us to do things that compromise our freedom, basically. And they give us a higher taste. That when we do these, we feel a kind of happiness that's different from, mundane sense pleasures, or even, mental pleasures, or whatever, things that satisfy the senses and the mind in this world. It's a higher level of pleasure that you're just like, wow. Once you've tasted that higher taste, it's like you can't really appreciate the lower tastes as much anymore, because by comparison, it just pales by comparison. And you just want more and more of spiritual activities. And these activities, they release us from the shackles that bind us to this world. So, they're liberating. They're liberating. They purify us of the mentality, the activities, and the bondage. They free us, like I was saying before, they free us from all of our karma. And ultimately, beyond that, beyond just sort of negating the negative, they also bring us into a positive spiritual life, where they awaken our dormant devotion for Krishna. Because in the heart of everyone, at heart, we're all devotees, because the nature of the soul is to be a servant of Krishna and to love Krishna and to be very enthused and enlivened in the service of Krishna. And we may not be attracted now, we may not be so enthused now, but if we just keep doing these things, then that dormant devotion will awaken more and more, and we'll feel more enlivened, more inspired, and more enthused to continue with spiritual life. So if we do these the yamas, the 4 don'ts, and these 5 niyamas, the 5 do's, then we can actually experience real freedom. We can experience a great deal of freedom. And even in a mundane sense, devotees have a lot more freedom. Like devotees in ISKCON travel more than anybody practically in the world. Like my father's always amazed. He's like, what do? You just spend your whole life traveling. He says, I don't know. And my father's like, he's had an amazing career. He's got a PhD. He knows all kinds of people. And he says, you travel more than anybody that I know, because I'm always like in a different country or in a different city. And he says, you don't seem to like have any obligations. You don't even have a job. Where do you even get your money from? Like he just doesn't understand the lifestyle, and how wonderful Krishna consciousness is, that if you just dedicate your life to Krishna, Krishna just provides for everything. He facilitates everything. He just sort of makes the impossible possible. And it's like every day is another miracle. You're just experiencing one miracle after another, and being able to just kind of like cruise through the world in a way that leaves very little tracks, that picks up very little baggage, and that you remain just sort of blissful and very liberated and happy, So this is the glories of just following these 9 simple principles. By comparison, go ahead and click the next slide. By comparison, in material life, there's just the illusion of freedom, right? Like it may be that you're in a situation where you want to do some things, but you don't have enough money to do the things that you want to do, or buy the things that you want to have, or go the places you want to go. So you get a promotion, you get a better income, and now you can do a few more things. But still you're restricted. It's just like you went from the small cage to the big cage. Or maybe you retired, so now you don't have to work 9 to 5, or maybe the kids grew up, so now you don't have to be there for them and pick them up from school and do all the stuff you do for your kids. Now it's like, woohoo, freedom. But it's still just like going from the small cage to the big cage, because as long as we're operating in the material sphere, everything material is limited. And so everything we do materially is going to be, we're going to be faced with material limitations. But go ahead, and this is the last slide here. But by observing all these 9 regulative principles of freedom, then we can finally break free from all the material trappings. And we can shed lifetimes of karmic baggage, be liberated from the cycle of repeated birth and death, get free from samsara, and realize our eternal spiritual identity. And because this body that we have, this mentality that we have, it's not us. It's not the real me. You know, it's not the real person. It's just a temporary thing, right? We're going to die. The soul's going to leave this body. We won't have this body anymore. So what's the use of identifying with this body and thinking, you know, I'm a middle-aged American woman? You know, it's like, I'm not. I'm just, that describes my body, you know, accurately, but it's not me, because I'm going to leave this body. One, I'm not going to be middle-aged forever. Soon I'll be old-aged. And, you know, who knows, you know, what's going to happen to me when I leave this body. You know, I might end up being a little baby who's, you know, male and, you know, born in Africa, or you never know, you know, just never know. So why do I identify so strongly? Just forget about it. It doesn't matter. But the real me is the soul. Is the soul. And actually the soul has its own identity. We all actually have a personality, our eternal personality. We even have an eternal spiritual form, which is beautiful. And so what we really need to find out, instead of just dwelling on this body and trying to make it more attractive and more beautiful and more fit, and, you know, working out and getting beauty treatments and plastic surgery to try to make this body the way we want it, we should focus on realizing who we really are, and in relation to Krishna. And that process of realizing who we are is the process of bhakti. And it gradually gets, the only way that we can know it is for it to be revealed to us. And the more we basically please Krishna through our devotional service to him, then he reciprocates by revealing himself to us, and revealing ourselves to us, and revealing our eternal relationship with him to us. And that's who we are. We're not separate from Krishna. Who we are is very intimately connected with who Krishna is, because we are servants of Krishna and we have that relationship with him. And in that relationship, there's so much happiness. It's just if you think of all the things that you ever dreamed of in a relationship, right? Especially young people, they're hoping for the perfect relationship, to find your soulmate, you know, your perfect partner, that they need to be this, that, the other thing. They need to tick all the boxes, right? So if you think of all the boxes that you want your perfect soulmate, you know, perfect relationship, that's the relationship with Krishna. You know, Krishna is the perfect person. He's actually the only one that can fulfill all of our desires for a loving relationship. And so in that relationship, it's just ever increasing love, ever increasing happiness. And it's in that relationship, in our eternal identity, that we can experience absolute freedom. So that's the goal, and that's what we're aiming for. And it all starts with the yamas and the niyamas, and it goes from there. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
And I'll just open up for any questions or comments or reflections.
So Mataji, the next program is going to start.
Oh,
So you're going to be available, so you can have time for Q&A. Right?
okay.
No, while having prasadam, you'll be available. So Mataji will be available, so you can have some Q&A at that time. The next program is already, people have already arrived for the visually.
Okay, I
impact
see.
program.
There's a special program today.
Special program today. So that's why otherwise we would have.
Okay,
had more
no
time for
worries.
Q&A.
Yeah, and we lost some time in the beginning trying to make the connection there, but okay. Well, thank you, and Hare Krishna.
Our great Prabhupada Prabhu ki.
You know, so we can make some space in the front. Come and get perform here.
Oh.